The Straw King, Chapter 12. The Scarecrow had a dizzying sense of flying through the air, far faster than the winged monkeys had carried him. Clouds flew by, and the landscape below rushed toward him, and then receded again. Glinda's grip on him never lessened, and somehow he knew he was safe, and then everything went dark. He heard a rushing sound, and had the sensation of passing through something thick and dense. "Hang on, dear," Glinda said. The Scarecrow squeezed his eyes shut. The pressure grew more and more intense until he was sure both of them would be crushed. With a sudden pop, the pressure vanished, and the Scarecrow tumbled to a soft carpeted floor. Blinking, he sat up and looked around him. He was in a beautiful, richly decorated bedroom. The walls were covered with a pink rose-patterned wallpaper, and thick pink carpet covered the floor. A huge bed piled high with pink satin cushions sat on one end of the room, but despite its size, the room itself was so big the bed hardly seemed to take up any room at all. An ornately carved divan upholstered in pink fabric was perfectly positioned to take advantage of the view from the room's huge picture windows, which looked over a garden. "Where are we?" asked the Scarecrow. "My palace, of course," Glinda laughed, throwing herself down on the divan and stretching luxuriously. "That last bit of going through the walls is always so dreary, but we made it safe and sound. Can I get you anything to eat or drink?" "No, thank you," the Scarecrow said, who was unable to do either of those things. "Well, I'm famished," Glinda proclaimed dramatically. She rummaged in the divan cushions and triumphantly held aloft an intricately carved, jewel-studded pink bird figurine. "Send up a strawberry sundae, please," she told the bird. The Scarecrow wondered if she might be a little batty, but to his surprise, the figurine perched aloud, and Glinda settled back on the cushions with a sigh, tucking the bird under her dress. "I do love ice cream after a battle," she said dreamily, closing her eyes. I find it really calms my nerves." Within minutes there was a soft knock on her bedroom door. Glinda showed no signs of moving, so the Scarecrow got up to open it. A maid in a neatly pressed pink uniform curtsied deeply and then gave a start when she saw him. "I didn't realize the mistress had a guest," she whispered, holding out a pink ice cream sundae on a pink tray. As soon as the Scarecrow took it from her, she bolted back down the corridor. She clearly had no desire to encounter Glinda herself. The Scarecrow brought Glinda her sundae, and Glinda rapturously spooned ice cream into her mouth. "Your, witchy eminence," the Scarecrow began. "Oh, just Glinda," she exclaimed. "I feel like we're old friends, and anyway, I hate formalities. Don't you?" "Glinda," he said awkwardly, "can you tell me, why am I here?" "Such an existential question," she laughed. "You really are an intellectual, dear Scarecrow." He couldn't quite tell if she was making fun of him, but decided she wasn't. Her expression grew serious. "As we discussed in the forest," she said, "that wretched monkey's plan was bound to fail. Now it's your turn, Scarecrow." "How have you come up with a plan?" He didn't know how to tell her that he hadn't even begun to think about another way to retake the palace. Now, in the safety of Glinda's palace, he tried to understand what had just happened. "I didn't think so many people would die," he said finally. "I haven't really thought about what to do next." Glinda lowered her eyes. Suddenly, he thought that he did not want to find out what it would be like to cross her. But then the expression passed again, and she smiled gently. "You've been through so much in the last day, but I did warn you that casualties would happen. There are always sacrifices that must be made when no one wishes to win a war." "I suppose that we need a stronger army," he said. The lion's forces weren't strong enough, even with the help of the winged monkeys, but Ginger lost plenty of her soldiers too. The castle's defenses would be weakened if we can find a way to strike again before she can recover. "Brilliant!" Glinda exclaimed, clapping her hands together. "I knew you'd come through, Scarecrow." As far as he could tell, he'd only stated the obvious, but he nodded as if her praise meant something to him. He hadn't forgotten that brief, mean look in her eye, or how the servant had seemed to be terrified of her. What did Glinda really want from him, and why is it so important to her that he believed she thought he was so intelligent? He was clever, to be sure, but if he was really honest with himself, He had to admit, he wasn't that clever. Not yet, anyway. So what game was Glinda playing? Glinda had finished her sundae, and she set the dish aside with a sigh of satisfaction. That really hit the spot, she declared. Now, dear Scarecrow, I have something to show you. Come with me. She got up from the divan, and he obediently followed her out of the room and down a long pink corridor. She led him to another much larger room, with walls made out of pink-tinted glass. Broadleaf pink plants climbed the glass, and huge hot pink blossoms nodded gently among the paler pink leaves. The ceiling was a stained glass mosaic, depicting various scenes. Some were strange to him, like girls with butterfly wings flying over a desert. Others were more familiar, the wizard floating in his balloon, Toto sitting obediently, and the Scarecrow himself, along with the woodman and the lion, walking merrily down the road of yellow brick. My solarium, Glinda said, waving her hand at the glass walls. It's marvelous, the Scarecrow breathed, looking around him in awe. I should really have the ceiling redone, Glinda said, looking up with a flash of irritation. All that old, boring Oz history no one cares about. Don't you think more flowers would be prettier? Yes, I'm sure, the Scarecrow said, but he looked up again. The only Oz history he knew was from the books he'd read so far. There were the witches, of course, and there had been the wizard, who had ruled Oz before him? He hadn't really gotten to that part yet. And Glinda took it all for granted. He envied all the years of knowing she had that he didn't. Glinda opened a set of glass doors and stepped into a balcony, gesturing for the Scarecrow to follow. The view awaiting him took his breath away. It wasn't the stunning vista of clear blue sky and high snow-capped mountains. It wasn't the sprawling flower gardens or the carefully pruned orchards. It was the rows and rows of girl soldiers, faces turned up to the balcony, saluting Glinda smartly, and every single one of them looked exactly like Glinda, down to the perfect, identically arranged ringlets. May I present my army, Glinda said, and smugness evident in her voice. At your disposal, dear Scarecrow, as am I.